Good morning. Continuing with where we left off yesterday, we will today look at some more definitions. What is enjambment? Enjambment is continuing a line after the line breaks. Whereas many poems end lines with the natural pause at the end of a phrase or with punctuation as end stopped lines, enjambment ends a line in the middle of a phrase, allowing it to continue on to the next line as an enjambed line. In other words, the thought that ends, or rather, which is a part of the last word of the line, will continue into the first word of the next line. Enjambment is derived from the French phrase enjambment, meaning to straddle something, as the sentence extends to a next line. Examples of enjambment. Here are a few basic examples of enjambment in poetry. Example 1. We were running to find what had happened beyond the hills. If written as a sentence, that is, we are running to find what had happened beyond the hills, it is clear that this phrase has no punctuation until the end. In the poem, each line is enjambed until the period at the end of the third line. In other words, last line of line 1 continues on to the first word of line 2. Example 2. The sun hovered above the horizon, suspended between night and day. This example is similar. The first and second lines are enjambed, whereas the third is end stopped. The importance of enjambment. Without enjambment, poetry would sound like this. I finished my day. I went home on the highway. I ate dinner and went to sleep. Pause, a full stop at the end of each line. Constantly end stopped lines that end with punctuation poetry is rhythmic, but ultimately dull. Enjambment allows lines to move more complicatedly than they would if simply end stopped. End stopped means ending with a full stop. Enjambment also allows lines to move more quickly as the eye hops to the next line to follow the thought or meaning of the poem. Whereas end-stop lines can feel relaxed, expected and direct, enjambed lines can feel more chaotic, nervous, flowing or fast. Choosing to end stop or enjamb can help better communicate a poem's overall mood and theme through lineation. Lineation means the way lines are broken in poems. In closing, enjambment is a poetic type of lineation used in both poetry and song. Whereas end-stopped lines can be clunky and abrupt, enjambment allows for flow and energy to enter a poem, mirror the poem's mood or subject. Another term that has been used in connection with Robert Browning's poetry is caesura. So what is a caesura? Caesura, pronounced as caesura, so we'll now use this word as caesura, refers to a break or pause in the middle of a line of verse. It can be marked as two vertical indications in the middle of the line, although generally it is not marked at all. It is simply part of the way the reader or singer pronounces the line. In this article, we will include the mark for the sake of clarity. The plural of caesura is caesurae, and it means cut in Latin. Caesurae is a feature of verse, not prose, but that does not mean it is exclusively restricted to poetry. In drama, notably the plays of William Shakespeare, there are often characters who speak in verse, and these characters may have caesura in their lines. The importance of caesura. In many classical meters, caesura was a requirement of certain lines. Latin, Greek, and Anglo-Saxon poets were required to place caesura in the middle of certain lines. Before the famous Anglo-Saxon epic poem has a caesura in each of its lines. In other words, there's a break in the middle. Unfortunately, the English translations don't preserve these caesura very well. Modern forms are much more flexible than classical forms, so caesurae are no longer required in poetry. However, they may still be used when a poet wants to break up the rhythm of a poem. This might have the effect of a dramatic pause between one phrase and the next. Or it might simply be an aesthetic choice. In the simplest cases, a caesura can help provide places for the reader or singer to breathe. I think that's an excellent technique. Some examples of caesura in literature. Example 1. Alexander Pope's first major poem, An Essay on Criticism, contains one of the most famous caesurae in all of English literature. And to quote the line, "To err is human, break means caesura, to forgive divine." The line is the same, there is a break in the middle of the line. Next, a technical term, sibilance. Definition of sibilance. Sibilance is a literary device where strongly stressed consonants are created deliberately by producing air from vocal tracts through the use of lips and tongue. Such consonants produce a hissing sound. However, in poetry, it is used as a stylistic device, and sibilants are used more than twice in quick succession. Most of the times, the S sound is the sibilant. Difference between alliteration and sibilance. Since alliteration also means repetition of sound, so what is the difference between these two terms? Alliteration is produced by the repetition of the first consonant sounds in the words, generally the first one or two letters, such as in "A big bully beats a baby boy." However, sibilance is also a specific type of alliteration that uses the soft consonants. In sibilance, hissing sounds are created. These soft consonants are S with SH, CH, and TH, including three others such as Z, X, F, and the soft C. For instance, "Sing a Song of Sixpence" is the title of a famous nursery rhyme, which can be considered as a good example of sibilance. Examples of sibilance in literature. Example 1, taken from Ode to Autumn by John Keats. The poem begins by the poet saying, season of mists and mellow fruitfulness, close bosom friend of the maturing sun, conspiring with him how to load and bless with fruit the vines that round the thatch eaves run, to bend with apples the mossed cottage trees, and fill all fruit with ripeness to the core, to swell the gourd and plump the hazel shells with a sweet kernel, to set budding more and still more, later flowers for the bees, for summer has overbrimmed their clammy cells. Unquote. This is the first stanza of the poem, which is filled with music and sibilance. You will notice that the sound of S is repeated very often. The words noted in bold are all sibilance examples. These are voiced with hissing sounds. Function of sibilance. An atmosphere can be created through sibilance, which helps in drawing the attention of the readers, painting a more colorful picture of the idea or the event. With the help of sibilance, descriptive scenes can be explained more carefully by laying stress on the specific letters. In fact, the sense of repeated sounds and then the making up of different literary devices through sibilance creates further musical effect for the readers. After having looked at the technical terms that will apply to the poetry of Robert Browning, in the next session we will take a look at the poem My Last Duchess in detail. Thank you for now.